Welcome to Njenje Media TV. My name is Maazi Ezeoke. As usual, I'm bringing you this fantastic conversation this evening. Here, as the flyer said, we are going to be having an interesting conversation, as I told us over the week. This evening, I would have the privilege to have this conversation with a man many of you know so much from this channel. In my conversation today, titled Vaccine Staffed Africa and the Madagascar Protocol, celebrating the resilience of African medicine in time of COVID-19. Now, to have this conversation this evening with me, as usual, it is an honor and a privilege to bring to you an erudite professor, a biomedical scientist, the former chairman of African Future Earth Committee, and he is no other person than Professor Chidi Osuagwu. Professor, welcome to Njenje Media TV.
Thank you very, very much.
So, Prof, how are you feeling today?
Oh, quite okay. Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody.
Okay, so, Prof, let's hit the ball rolling. Now, to our viewers, I will say we are sorry because of some technical glitch. That's why we were a couple of minutes late. But, Prof, let's hit the ground running. Now, quickly, Prof, as our topic suggests, you know, in the last, let's say 300 years, now we are marking these 300 years anniversary of Africans introducing inoculation vaccination to America and the world all over. Why is it, these feats that Africa has given to the world, why is this not being celebrated? This inoculation and the vaccination, not many people know that it's as old as over 300 years now. So why do you think that is not being celebrated and Africa is not being mentioned anywhere?
Well, thank you very much. Now, whenever someone wakes up, it's their own morning. Those of us who are here today, it's part of the celebration because we are aware. And we call it a many people are not aware of the fact that as things stand today, some of the best management of this global pandemic that has caused global health disaster, the best management protocols are of African origin. For the best purpose of prevention, prophylaxis, the best protocol, of course, is vaccination. Vaccination. What in Igbo we say, Ibu si ahụ. As many people might be hearing for the first time, vaccination, of which America is the world leader now, has all the vaccines. I'm pleading with Americans to go for boosters or go ahead and get the vaccination. That it is a part of ancient African health technology, which was introduced to the colony of New England, then 300 years ago, exactly today, 1721. There had been a smallpox epidemic in Boston and other parts of the US, and people were dying helplessly and accusing the gods and angels and even the devil and everybody accusing whoever he favored of being responsible. But an African freedman at that time, he was a slave, but he had won his freedom, had gone to his former master, a reverend pastor, and told him, the man guy is Meta, he told him that, look, where I come from in Africa, we have a prophylaxis for this. I don't expect to catch it because of that prophylaxis. I'm inoculated. I was inoculated in Africa. And the man that delivered this message is a man whose slave name was Onesimus. 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 From the way he was described, he had come from the general area of Ghana, what is now Ghana, because he was called a Coromantine. That there's a port, a sail port by that name in the general area of what is now Ghana. But the Africans were in fact inoculating themselves, and Africans were inoculating themselves. Interestingly, when this happened, the European colonies rioted in Boston, asking themselves, how can you use contagion to cure contagion? They rioted, led by their priests and elite and doctors. But one bold doctor called Boylston tried it. He inoculated about 600 people. At the end of the epidemic, of all those inoculated by Boylston, only 2% died. Of those who refused to be inoculated, like some people in America today are refusing to be inoculated, 14.8% died. You can see the gap. So they now believed in the efficacy of this African science. And that is how inoculation and vaccination got to America. And of course, America has become a dominant power in the world in sciences and health. But this technology that is now the main the prevention is of African origin, introduced by Onesimus in 1721.
So thank you very much, Prof, for that introduction. Obviously, one of the things where I marvel is...
Over here in Africa, the prediction was that the Africans were going to die en masse because of the inadequacy of our manifest health science at this time. But what people don't know is that what they are looking at is the Western aspect of African health science. They are not looking at African traditional health science. And you'll find, therefore, that places like Madagascar, where they have the best place in phytochemistry, one of the best places around the world, that have been guided by African paradigm of health and herbal treatment, phytochemical treatment, nutraceutical treatment, have developed a very good protocol that if you go and look at the data being compiled by John Hopkins and World Meat and so on, nobody is talking about it, but they are doing very well. And those countries like Tanzania, Burkina Faso, and so on, that have listened to them are also doing very well. So that you look at the curative aspect, Africa is in it. The prophylaxis, like we have said, even though we don't have the vaccine now that we introduced to the Americans, it is because the white man turned the African world upside down. So that, like they took our land and gave us the Bible, they took our vaccination, and we are now looking at them. But we are aware of what is going on, and Africa has managed to do better than predicted by relying significantly on our traditional medical system. And I can say this confidently because of my background. I'm an Osuagwu. And that has meaning. In fact, the title I prefer to be whenever the author of After God is Dibia, Professor Anna Enume calls me as a Dibia. That's the title I prefer to be called. But you also find out that those people are still in charge in our knowledge system and medical science today, such that the young man from here who made an effort, who contributed to the articulation of the Pfizer vaccine, Onyema Osuagwu, he comes from that family lineage. His mother is an Osuagwu. You will not, many people will not know. Many people don't know how strong African knowledge system is. It is very strong. But many people are not aware, which is part of our problem, which makes it difficult for us to exploit what is just before us. So that is the situation as things stand.
Okay. So, Prof.
That's where I am in a celebrative mood. And I want others to also understand why and join.
Okay, so Prof, now while you were making your introduction, you touched on the expectation that obviously we may have seen, the prediction basically that dead bodies should be littered everywhere in Africa. And we have seen in the last 1 year now that prediction wasn't the case. And the world suddenly is surprised that that didn't happen in a place that has so much poor healthcare infrastructure. How does one explain that? And also, certain countries seems to have been worse impacted by COVID other than the others. The question is, why is that so, Prof?
Well, when I was going to school in America in the early 70s, my father gave me 2 mandates. He said, go and learn what the white man knows, but don't impart his world view. And he also asked me that is good enough to get medicine mix and medicine dates and this and give. But the more important thing was the essences of those things, to know them. And that governed my education, so that a very good education, a first degree in biology with chemistry minor, spent 3 years to get a master's in chemistry by making up my chemistry, then went to study medicinal chemistry at University of Houston. Along the line, I was actually focused in trying to synthesize anti-sickling agents. I found out that we didn't understand sickle cell at that time, and later left, went into biochemistry to try to define the disease, which I did. Unfortunately, again, the problem we have is even when that knowledge created about 30 years ago is there, we lack the capacity to use it. But because of my background, whenever a drug or something is mentioned, I look up the structure, I understand structure-function relationships, I understand the mechanics of something, study it, so that you find out that within many African communities, where this COVID creates problem is in the cities and in those areas where they have totally abandoned African traditional medicine to go into the Western system, particularly South Africa. Just like they were hit more roughly by HIV/AIDS, they're also suffering more with COVID-19. Part of it has to do with the cold weather, because this sickness is actually an energy sapping system, so that anybody that in a cold environment will lose all the energy that we need to fight back. That's part. But part of it is abandoning African traditional medicine and abandoning African traditional food. If people go online and Google my name, in 2019, I delivered a major lecture on Forest West African indigenous food, indigenous diet, and modernization diseases. And I had shown that we are epigenetically adapted to our food. That is, our food at that level is already leveled up with our genetic system, so that we need to stick with our food to be healthy. And the African doctrine of food and medicine are not really distinguishable, which the Greek, who borrowed their medicine from Africa, are popularized also in the West, is still valid. So that you find out there was a study made by Professor Keefe of the University of Pittsburgh with his group. And he switched the diet of African Americans with the diets of rural Africans, and found out that African Americans started suffering. Africans started suffering the diseases, including colon cancer, that African Americans suffer, while the African Americans who went on African diets started recovering. And that is very, very important, that if you look at what our people are using in the rural areas, those things they use contain particular group of chemicals called terpenoids. Not only terpenoids, but a particular subgroup called safety terpene lactones. And these are what we have used historically to treat malaria. And this thing we call artemisinin that we use to treat malaria now is a member of that group. So that when this thing, the symptoms came and Madagascar started using artemisinin, which came from the herbal preparation Artemisia annua, which they call the COVID organics, and we are getting good results. We are doing the right thing. But you see, quickly, negative forces went in. France went and forged data to try to confound it and source it. But President Rajo Lenin, their president, is a courageous, bold man. He stuck with it. Later, Madagascar combined that artemisinin, which has artemisinin, with ivermectin, another sesquiterpene lactone. And if you go and look at world meter statistics, in Madagascar, Tanzania, and all those countries using the Madagascar protocol, what Jose Luis Abreu, a Mexican professor, called the Madagascar protocol. They are doing very well. And the only reason people are not treating this thing effectively here they will do the work. And I know how they did the work. Part of the problem has that when it comes to drugs like that, you are required to identify the active ingredient, like my father would put it, and then the mechanism, how it works. And this is where the trouble lies. Many people do not really know how this, the mechanism, how this thing works. But in a paper I delivered at a conference at Aba here 2 months ago, I explained how it works. The mechanism is very simple, but it is not something a person who is not really well educated in chemical sciences can grasp.
So does that mean that
this is part of what the problem is?
So does that mean that the mechanism for Madagascar protocol cannot be explained?
Hello, raise your voice, please.
Yes, I said, does that mean that the mechanism for Madagascar protocol cannot be explained?
The mechanism is very clear, it's very straightforward, and it is because of the nature of the mechanism that you can use it as both a preventive and a curative. The only one now that is a approved drug for treating this thing is remdesivir. But remdesivir is not a drug in the proper sense. It's an adjuvant. That is, it is like a road bump to slow the traffic that cannot stop it. It cannot stop the traffic because it is part of a chemical particle from which genes are created. And that particle is called guanosine. So remdesivir is a guanosine analog. So it works by competing with guanosine. So when the COVID-19 virus wants to pick guanosine, it will pick remdesivir by mistake. And when it puts it, it doesn't work. So it slows the process down. That's why remdesivir slows down the process, but hasn't shown significant addition to survival rate. But the sesquiterpenylactones work by a mechanism called farnesylation. They go and attach themselves to an amino acid called cysteine, which is found on the active sites of all proteins, of most proteins. In this case, cysteine is in the spike protein of the virus, and it is in the receptor protein of the human cell. So if you take it earlier, what we call the sesquiterpenylactone will go and attach itself to that cysteine and form what is called a covalent bond, the strongest possible bond. And once if it can form that at that point of the spike protein, form it at the receptor site called the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, and form it at another point called the nuclear factor kappa 2 that allows this thing to get into the heart of the cell and begin to multiply its protein. What it does, it forms those covalent bonds. They don't break easily. So that once that happens, and this is trying to enter, it won't enter easy. That's why it can act as a preventive or prophylaxis. Yes. And when you still take it, when the thing has come in and you take enough, and add other things, zinc, vitamin D, and also things like that, that help, then it will stop it if you take enough and start in time. If it doesn't stop it, the laws of chemistry as we know it would have broken down. I can assure you of that.
Okay, so Prof, now you talked about you were talking about the Madagascar protocol, obviously, and you are a proponent of the protocol. But when I look at the data,
speak up, please.
Okay, when I look at the data on the Madagascar protocol, and I can see, or rather, when I look up on the Madagascar itself, I'll see that Madagascar had about 42,000 cases, with about 958 deaths. Now, is it that the people were not taking the regiment of the protocol? How come a country with such protocols still recorded close to 1,000 deaths, considering their population? Did you
try
get
to
that?
kill somebody. There will be people who will not be in a position to even access the thing when it comes up, and there are prayers and or take other things. So it is the rate it is killing. When you go and study the data, you will see that Madagascar's rate is much, much better than many other countries. That is the issue. The rate is killing. It's like what happened in Boston. 2% died of those inoculated, whereas 14.8% died. Somebody has to die. It's all probabilities, but it is now the rate. And of course, Madagascar is acting as a country. You find in some other countries, like US and Brazil, where racism became a factor. We are actually, when they found out it was attacking Black people more, some people felt they should go for what is called herd immunity, allow it to attack everybody, expecting the Black people to die out. That's part of why they suffered grievously. But again, there are people who actually, for instance, don't want to use the Madagascar protocol. If you find Mexico, it was having very terrible situation like the United States. But when the health workers in the field ignored their health minister and started using a protocol related to the Madagascar protocol, that catastrophic rate eased out. And that's what's going on. Unfortunately, there are cases, there are people who are campaigning vigorously against using some of these protocols. And if you study the phenomenon, you see the case of a group in Britain led by one Tess Lowry, and fighting against what a guy called Dr. Andrew Hill did when they made analysis of how a component of this protocol, which is ivermectin, was being written about, and the organization funding what they do went and wrote the thing. And in India now, the Indian Bar Association is in court with Suman Swanmi Martin, a WHO official, then caught with WHO for trying to play with the information. So a lot of things are going on. With time, some of these things will become in the open. Let's not go too far into them. So there are a lot of things. In short, part of the problem is that nobody, no organization speaks for humankind in the world today. None.
Wow.
None.
So
just like no organization speaks for the biosphere, where we have the climate crisis. It's part of the problem. There are people who feel they have, who worship money and are ready to sacrifice humanity for that if need be. That's part of the problem. But unfortunately, they can't go to the mountains of Haiti to stop the villagers from drinking sunflower tea, from which they get a lot of self-repeated lactones, or come here to stop people from brewing tea of all the self-repeating rich use to treat malaria.
Okay,
But
Prof.
that is part of what's going on.
Okay, Prof. Now, obviously, you know that the vaccine or the inoculation program in Africa hasn't really gained much traction. What do you think is behind it? Is it a trust issue that the people do not trust the vaccine, or that the African nationals haven't got enough vaccine to administer to its
Hello,
people?
speak up, please.
Prof, I believe I don't know if there
Hello,
is a,
speak. Raise
I
your
don't
voice, please.
I don't know if there is any issue with your speaker, Prof.
Maybe there is, but
Okay.
if you raise your voice, I hear better.
Okay. So, Prof, I repeat my question again. Now, there is this issue. There is issue with inoculation in Africa. Now, the question is, do you think that the people are not taking the vaccine as a result of trust issue, or are people not taking the vaccine because there is not enough vaccine out there?
Well, I think it is more lack of vaccine than a trust issue. And you see, African governments have been pleading to be given the license to manufacture vaccines in Africa. But those who hold the license or licenses to those vaccines are holding onto it, claiming their patent rights, which will allow them to make money. And but now that we are having 200th anniversary of the introduction of inoculation to the United States, I think part of what I think we do as a celebration, I write a letter, I hope you and others will sign it, we sent to President Biden and said, Mr. President, please, in the name of Onesimus, give us more vaccine. I think that is merited. And you can see what has happened to us. We had these technologies. We introduced it to your people. You are now enjoying it.
Yeah, but sorry,
and we are dying.
Sorry, Prof. Sorry, Prof.
Please, in the name of Onesimus, let us have the capacity or the vaccine or the capacity to produce the vaccines.
Yeah, Prof. But the Americans are not stopping us. We have we have people who have the capacity to have developed African vaccine itself. So why didn't Africa develop their own vaccine? Why must Africa wait for the Western world, to give them the license?
Well, I don't know about African vaccines. I've been following what's been happening, and there's a group at Osun also that are talking of the possibility, but I haven't really seen an African center where they produce and tested workable vaccines. But there are sources like the Cubans. The Cubans have actually a number of vaccines. One they call sovereignty, another they call Blah, and so on. About 5 of them. The African Union, if we had more dynamic leaders, we don't have dynamic leaders, we have to face it. That actually, unfortunately, applies to the university system, where our people are still catechism oriented. They don't see what is going on as an emergency. We have capable people, but if we have the right orientation and the courage, because to do some of these things requires courage. It requires fearless people. You are promoted and so on by approval of your peers. But innovation and leadership in science is done by peerless people, people whose peers cannot understand. it has a high cost. I don't know if you have heard of anybody who defended a PhD before without a supervisor. If you have not, we are looking at one, Chidi Osuagwu, because my supervisor said he couldn't follow what I was doing. He wanted me to work on enzymes. I said, well, enzymes are good, but I'm interested in thermodynamics because luckily I had a professor in America who taught me if I didn't have strong physical basis for what I was doing, I wasn't doing or saying anything. And then when I insisted on this, the man said, well, you're on your own. Luckily for me, they brought some of the smartest person around at that time at the University of Port Harcourt, and I defended. But soon after, the guy, Professor Mike, left for North America. That's part of the problem we have. We don't have courageous people in our academic leadership, and we don't have well-informed people who are proper leaders for the times, who can actually visualize the possibilities, because most of these people are part of the Berlin state that has made it possible for Africa to give vaccination to the world, but lack it. It is something we must confront, and I'm happy with young Africans. President Magufuli and Rajolina, and said instead of not getting the African, that's what we need to move forward. Catechism cannot help us. We need innovation. We need chief priests of science who are courageous and peerless, because only the peerless people, not those are proved by their peers who are catechumens, lead the world in innovation and science.
Okay, Prof. Now, if you can hear me clearly, Prof, you would recall that sometime last year, the Madagascar Protocol was received with so much fanfare. Now, 1 year, 1.5 years later, why do you think no single African country is going ahead with that Madagascar Protocol? What happened?
No. That's not correct statement. Countries like Tanzania, Burkina Faso, and so on are using it. But you see, what happened was, what Madagascar introduced in the first instance is COVID organics, which is a tonic that came from preparation. It was repurposing of the anti-malarial plant called Artemisia, from which we get antimicinin. We treat malaria now with antimicinin combination therapy. So they produced it, and people said, that it made a jest about it. But actually, there was conscious effort to sabotage it by France. And the Pasteur Institute in Madagascar fabricated data to try to discredit that, and they were caught, and they apologized. But since then, they will be playing, and who started joining with them to try to know what to do. There was a report they are supposed to release. We haven't heard about that report. But what Madagascar did along the line is they also now found out that ivermectin is an analog of artemisinin, and they now combine the two to get the Madagascar Protocol. Those who are aware are using it, and they're doing well. But you see, I said the World Health Organization is supposed to release a report on what they did about it. They're not releasing it. But India Bar Association has taken them to court for not being transparent in what they're doing and saying. So what I've said is that nobody, no organization in the world is speaking for humankind. Each people will have to serve themselves, particularly the black race. There are people who want us to die out, but we have enough resilience in our system. The Greeks who introduced the medicine to the world learned it from the Egyptians, and the Hippocratic who did that was born 2,200 years after Imhotep of Egypt, who introduced, who was the leader in science, in medical science and so on. So we should go back to our tradition. And I'm telling you, I speak as an Osuagwu, and I told you of another Osuagwu, who is involved in the Pfizer vaccine. We are here, we are active, but in most cases you find catechis who have seized the academic system and not knowing what they are doing, in fact. So there is something going on, but Africa has to realize that we have the capacity, and we are lucky. Ancestors left us a lot of knowledge. We should go back to it. And from what I'm finding now, we are going to benefit hugely from this knowledge that I'm seeing now. Because I now find out that this thing that is helping our people survive, that is deeper. If you go to Burkina Faso, they have tested one of these sesquiterpenes, ivermectin, and it kills not only malaria parasite, it kills it and kills mosquito. And this is very important and significant because our bodies have adapted to these things. And recently, some while ago, you had the owner of Ife saying they produce something that can help with this thing, that they produce, that what they did includes bitter leaf. Very good. I checked out whether bitter leaf contains sesquiterpene lactones. At least 6 of them, very known and more, are contained. In fact, that's what makes it bitter. So if you can eat enough, you can extract it. The problem is ability to extract enough. It's difficult to concentrate these things in the body. But it contains it. It will do the work if you concentrate it enough.
Is that without washing, without without washing it, or after, after
washing what?
The bitter leaf?
No. Well, if I tell you the bitter thing is the sesquiterpene lactones, so it's better to cook it like that and eat it, and you can die with the virus. But what I'm pointing out is when he said that, some people try to make a jest of what he was saying. But actually, they should not make a jest of what they don't know. And those are catechis who don't understand the white man system or the African system. Because Africans have been dealing with this thing, like it said, for a long time. And that is what we should be doing. Work with such courageous men and modernize what we have. But understand it, like my father would say, understand the principle, the essence, and the mechanism. You have to explain it. How does it, what is in it? Sesquiterpene lactone, how does it work? Oh, by phosphatidylation. You know the mechanism, you explain it. Or anybody who tries to make nonsense of you will disgrace himself. So this is the kind of thing we should be facing, and but appreciate that our people are not dying because they are relying on our traditional phytomedicine, and it is grounded in hard science. because Africa introduced science to the world. And
Okay.
you know, the inoculation we introduced to America 300 years ago, it's ubiquitous here with the inoculation for snake bite, inoculation for scorpion bite, inoculation. Even people now try to take inoculation for bullet. I don't know how much that works. But
Inoculation
inoculation is part of Ibusiao. It's part of our deep medicine.
Is the inoculation for bullet the one called Odieshi?
Oh, Odieshi. Well, I don't encourage people because we try that in Biafra and learned it doesn't work very well.
Well,
our young people should not go trying it again. It's our try before, it doesn't work very well.
Okay, Prof, we will be rounding up now, but before we do, I have sort of another question, which is on vaccine nationalism. Now, considering what is happening, you hinted on it before now, on vaccine nationalism. Now, considering that our forebears contributed to vaccine and inoculation, as it were, about 300 years ago, now, what do you think we should be demanding from the world right now when, as regards to vaccine nationalism, that people do not necessarily want to give out some of this vaccine? And as you also hinted before, why is it that African countries cannot look towards Cuba? Because I do not think that if American pharmaceutical company says we are not going to give you this, for you to go produce for yourself, why can't Africa look towards Cuba, and Cuba could also probably do the same thing? I think Cuba might be more friendly than the American society. Thank you.
Okay. What I would do is to encourage our people to get the vaccination. It is our technology we exported to the world through America 200 years ago. Get the vaccination. Then, like I've said, I'm going to write a letter which we all sign online. Maybe you will help coordinate it and ask President Biden's, Mr. President, please, in the name of Onesimus, let Africa have more vaccine. Please, in the name of Onesimus, reproduce of 300 years of Onesimus introducing inoculation and vaccination to your country, and honor him. Name the Center for Infectious Diseases, headed by Anthony Fauci, or after Onesimus. It is mean and worthy to do. This is a tricentennial. Maybe you are not aware because history has allowed those who borrowed our things to try to suppress it one way or the other. But this one, we are reminding you, name that Center for Infectious Diseases, headed by Anthony Fauci, after Onesimus. Then the African Union should make arrangement with Cuba and get their this thing and mass produce it. They'll give it to us. Look at Europe. They are opposing releasing the license. They want us to die, and you are waiting for them to give you approval. They control who? World Health Organization. Because the world order now is built around states. And states are controlled by special interests. That's why certain states that have big money and big guns have veto power in the United Nations. Africa does not have. We cannot die. We must reach out to whoever we can to get vaccination for our people. But meanwhile, do what Madagascar is doing. And if you don't, your punishment is death, and you don't deserve sympathy. Read up on the Madagascar protocol, combining ivermectin and artemisinin, and they are doing very well. Nobody can suppress Africa at this time. You want one petty country, poor country, trying to play games with the mother continent, the civilizational foundation of this world. So in this period, we are celebrating the gift of inoculation, vaccination to the world. We are celebrating our survival rate so far. If those that go in the cities and stay there and eat nonsense and waiting for aliens that want them to die to come and keep them alive, that's their business. But the people in the villages are doing the right thing. That's why they are surviving. They are coming out in the sun to get enough vitamin D.
Yeah, but Prof,
most of them have a cross immunity by being exposed to all these things and so on.
Prof,
those are helping.
If I may interject here. Now, if our people, as you said, most of the, we can get most of the things needed to fight this from the food we eat, from the environment, then why do we then need the inoculation? Why do we need to go ask America to give us the license to do the mass inoculation?
Well, the inoculation is still the best preventive available. Why did Africans invent it to start with? They invented it because it has always been the best at the time they invented it, they also had phytomedicine. But they realized that those who have suffered it and will build up enough immunity that you can now give it covering fire with phytomedicine. So we should stick with that paradigm as invented by our ancestors. And that is actually part of the Madagascar protocol, is they are following African paradigm of medicine. Africans don't treat one disease with one drug. That is alien and scientifically unreasonable. That is why the new idea of one drug, one disease, one drug, it leads to disease resistance. The original COVID organic, the researchers who have followed the arguments, actually we are pointing out that there were factors, congeners, that made the tonic more efficacious than the artemisinin in isolation. And that is consistent with African paradigm of polytherapy. But the new way that you look for this disease, the next year, the organism will walk around it. The next year you live for another thing, making money. It's a foolish way, but some people who might know what to do want to make money at the expense of humankind. But Africa, that is the chief victim of that process, should not be foolish enough to accept such a pathway.
So, Prof, thank you very much. That's a very fine place to leave it. And it has been my pleasure to, have you here as my guest. Thank you very much once more for joining me, Professor.
Thank you very, very much, and welcome.
Again, I take it that your connection is a little bit, not allowing you make the closing remark there.
Now, Madagascar protocol. Read up
Okay, so Prof, I thought we were coming back, but I think the connection is still back. So it has been a very good hour that you joined us now. It has been a very eye-opening and interesting conversation titled "Vaccine Starved Africa and Madagascar Protocol: Celebrating the Resilience of African Medicine in Time of COVID-19." Now, or in the last of 45 minutes, I've been speaking with Professor Chidi Osuagwu. Again, many of you will know, as I've said at the beginning, Professor Chidi Osuagwu is a biomedical scientist, a former chairman of African Future Earth Committee. It's been my pleasure to have him here, and every one of you that have joined me, I say thank you very much for being part of this
Thank you
broadcast.
very, very much.
And
And bye, everybody.
thank you very much once more, Prof. And thank you and have a wonderful evening, everyone.